You too.
You're looking good?
Yeah, you too.
Good?
Yeah.
Doing good. Come on, I need to come on the traveling, I'm sure. You got this. It's a good speech.
I threw in a couple of
Good.
lead, don't follow.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Lead, don't hide, but
You got this. You got this. So after you, Elena.
Oh.
We're going to stick Elena in. So that there's reps from, So, and I'll pass it to Senator Elena Parent to get some remarks from the state senate. And Josh McClure and Jason Estevez. Thanks for passing on to me. We got a good 5 minutes.
Hey man. So I'm going to Atlanta.
Yes. Okay, let me get on your other side. There's be a lane on that side.
So do you want me to?
Shoe baby.
I'll finish. You want me to rotate to you?
This way, yeah.
Okay.
I'll sit to the side.
Republican mom.
I'll get in front of you again. At the end, I'll be doing the call to action and then taking questions. Any hardballs, I'll take the first hit at them. Then any of the legislators or sort of yourself related, if you want to add, please, step in.
So what I'll do is once I finish, it's your show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Elena's here. Yeah. Okay.
We got everybody.
Let's start in 1 minute.
Sounds good.
1 minute?
You good?
I'm good. I'll stay in. I know we went through it. Look.
Look at the kids, see? School group.
There you go. There you go.
Where's Joshua?
Joshua. No, that's Chelsea.
You look Tanya? Shay. I see Claudia. I mean, people are.
Thank you. A bunch of people actually
Right. Well, hopefully we have a good trip.
Way too soon.
Let me know when to go. So.
I think there's a natural
So Joshua is not available. So we are going to put him ideally before Jim.
Oh.
And I will signal to you.
Yeah.
So I'm turning it over to Steve.
You want to go?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We gather today in mourning for the Georgians who recently lost their lives to senseless gun violence. It's past time for Georgia leaders to do more than just send thoughts and prayers. We are demanding action to end gun violence. Last week, the shooting in Midtown Atlanta left 4 Georgians wounded and 1 dead. The shooter led police on an 8-hour manhunt. Metro Atlanta schools were locked down, businesses were shuttered, and people across the city hid in fear. Just 1 day later in Moultrie, Georgia, another gunman went on a shooting rampage, killing his grandmother, his mother, and a third victim before killing himself. These mass shootings do not even include the daily gun violence in many of our communities. Georgia has the highest rate of gun homicides and gun assaults in this country, the 8th highest. And firearms are leading the cause of death for Georgia's children and teens. Georgia dies by gun suicide every 10 hours on average, every 10 hours. We cannot, should not live like this. The epidemic of gun violence affects us all. Parents send their children to school every morning with a pit in their stomach. Too many people have gone to churches, spas, doctor's offices, grocery stores, malls, parks, concerts, and never returned home due to senseless gun violence. The growing threat that anyone could be next hangs over all Georgians, and our constituents don't want to live like this anymore. Democrats have been leading on gun safety legislation for years. Republicans continue to hide behind excuses. It's time for us to put politics aside and lead to protect the lives of all Georgians. I say to the Republican leadership, who currently control the State House, the State Senate, and the governor's mansion, lead, don't hide. To add insult to injury, the day after these tragic events happened, Georgia's governor of this great state cut funding to mental health by millions of dollars. During the 2023 legislative session, Democrats proposed 16 bills to reduce gun violence. Not one was given a vote. We're calling for a special legislative session to consider the following bills. HB 44, universal background checks. HB 135, you can applaud. HB 135 and 161, safe storage bills. HB 584, the Georgia Red Flag Protective Order Act. And last but certainly not least, I would have to throw in HB 19, the state budget. We need to look at what he just did with those 33 pages of cuts. These common sense measures are proven policy solutions to curb gun violence. It is no surprise that a strong bipartisan majority of Georgians support the passage of these gun safety bills. Gun violence affects communities all over this great state, which is why we need our leaders to lead and put the lives of Georgians before politics. This is why we're calling for a special legislative session. It's time for the Republicans. The urgency of Georgia's gun violence epidemic warrants an equal and urgent response. Lives will be lost every day that Georgia leaders, Republicans, fail to lead. We say lead, don't hide. The time is now. Now I'll pass it to my dear colleague, Senator Elena Parent.
Thank you, Leader Beverly. My name is Elena Parent. I am honored to serve as the chairwoman of the Senate Democratic Caucus. Like many communities, here we are again. We are mournful for the precious life lost last week and the many survivors and their families whose lives will be forever marked by tragedy. The shooting in Midtown last week imposed collective trauma on millions of people during the many hours of the manhunt. We are outraged that we are forced to live with gun violence. We are terrified that we could be next, or our child, or another loved one could be next. We are exhausted because we have spoken out, we have donated, we have lobbied and marched time and time again, begging for the violence to stop. No right is absolute. All rights afforded each of us must be balanced against other people's rights. The Constitution may have a Second Amendment, but it starts with ensuring domestic tranquility. And the right of domestic tranquility is being denied to us each and every day. The misuse of guns and the frequency of terrifying incidents are an everyday occurrence, with 200 mass shootings logged already this year in our country. This, I argue, is a predictable consequence of a complex society with almost no restrictions, in some states like ours, on who, where, and when someone can acquire deadly weapons, including those that can kill dozens in minutes. As no right is absolute, it must be balanced against other rights. The position taken by our Republican colleagues that no laws should be changed in response to the crisis of gun violence in Georgia is not sustainable, because the people are crying out for change and the voters are demanding change. We must and we will change this. We will march on. We must all pull together for as long as it takes to crack the code to stop the guns before they stop us. Each of us has a role to play. Each of us must do what we can, because there is no one person, organization, or policy that can fix this. But in our legislative role, in my legislative role, I say the level of carnage in our society must be addressed by the people who have been elected to set policy for this great state of Georgia, lawmakers, the governor, and the lieutenant governor. I am not going to be here screaming out to those that already agree with me. I am calling my Republican colleagues to see if they might be willing to talk and listen so we can find a path forward for some legislative solutions that will help. Minority Leader Beverly laid out some that are widely supported by the public, gun safety measures that are common sense. We do not need every Republican elected in this General Assembly to come to the table, but we need enough to penetrate the barrier of the majority. I'm hopeful that by knocking on the door of reason and humanity incessantly, we might just get a safe storage bill passed. Guns are the #1 killer of children a number of years running. With Republican legislators in Texas considering raising the age to buy AR-15s from 18 to 21, a modest but important step, with the Republican governor of Tennessee calling for a red flag law, And even with the US Congress coming together to make modest progress after Uvalde, I have hope, and we will continue to march on. And what can all of you do? A lot. Republicans control our state's agenda, which is why, as Leader Beverly said, none of the 16 gun safety measures received a vote. And let's not forget that many of these measures have been pending for decades or more, a decade or more. The Republicans may control the agenda, but they do not control you. You can work to change Republican elected officials' minds. And please do not forget that you can run for office and you can vote for Democrats. And you can reach and teach your communities to do the same. Together, we are the solution, and we do have the power. Thank you. And now I'm honored to call up to the podium my good friend and colleague, House Minority Whip Sam Park.
Good morning, everyone. So I wanted to thank first all the folks who've gathered here to demand an end to gun violence and to hold all of us elected officials accountable to do the right thing. Thank you to Leader Beverly, the Georgia House Minority Leader, for his remarks. Thank you to the chair of the Senate Democratic Caucus for her remarks, and certainly thank you to the members of the media here gathered to amplify our voices, demanding action now. I know this is a challenging circumstance that we're in. These are difficult times, but we have to remind ourselves that we do hold the power to bring about change. We do not have to live in constant fear of gun violence. The elected officials here who are gathered, along with more than 70 who have signed a letter calling for a special session, we stand with the people in demanding action now to address this epidemic of gun violence. So I want to just go through the rest of the program, but before doing so, if y'all would join me in also thanking Representative Syra Draper, who really took the lead in organizing this press conference and bringing us all together. Thank you, Representative Draper. So for the rest of the program, for the rest of this press conference, we'll have Joshua Anthony come and speak first, who will be sharing the perspective as a student and a young person. Next, we'll then have Dr. Claudia Fruin, who will share the perspective as a pediatrician, a grandmother, and a gun owner. After Dr. Fruin, we'll have Laura Judge to share the perspective of a veteran and a mother. And then lastly, we'll have Janet Paulson to share the perspective of a survivor of gun violence. Then I'll be taking it, then we'll open it up for questions, which I'd be happy to take. So first and foremost, I'd like to welcome Joshua Anthony to come and share his thoughts. Come on, Mr. Anthony.
I was spent the whole night really trying to figure out what I could say today that would bring some type of solace or some type of unity to what we're dealing with. But I'm not going to do that because I'll be lying to you all and I'll be lying to everybody up here that has potentially lost somebody due to gun violence. We have the same conversation every few weeks. This isn't a yearly thing. This isn't a monthly thing. This has become a weekly, almost daily occurrence. We have this conversation so much that we try to have, I was working with the Young Dems, I'm with the Young Dems currently of Georgia, and we put out legislation. We spent our summertime working to put together legislation so that we could ensure that this would not happen in our state and that it could hopefully spill over into other states so that we could help them as well. But that did not happen because we rather on the other side of the aisle having an Olympic level contest about who is right instead of what the right thing is to do. I am 20 years old. I have no business telling a 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old how to run the state. That doesn't make any kind of sense. If you do your jobs the correct way, that will represent not only people that look like me, but your own communities, the communities in which people have consistently been infiltrating because we have this idea that everything is going to be more perfect if we lessen the restrictions on weapons. That's not how that has ever worked in the United States. We've tried our best. The youth has. Many of the colleagues here today have tried our best to ensure that we can push for a place for our children to feel the safest. But instead, the consensus idea is let's put more police in the community and in the neighborhoods and in the schools. That has consistently, the data shows, not helped our community at all. We spend more time trying to police the people instead of putting checks on what has consistently been hurting our community. And by no means am I saying that there is not a necessity for the Second Amendment, but we should not be trading parts of metal and plastic for our children and women and men's lives every single day. That doesn't even make a sliver of sense. We do this so consistently. I am tired of standing here. I am fatigued of talking to my colleagues, talking to the other side of the aisle. I am tired of having this conversation so often. I apologize. I am filled with nothing more than anger and fatigue because we do this every day. I am sick of seeing women and children disenfranchised because of the incompetence of not only this chamber, but of the neglect of all over the country. We had another shooting in the last week that wasn't even here, but yet we continue to act as if everything will be better if we continue to roll back the restrictions on guns. Please grow up. If you are willing to represent the people of this state, act as if you are going to do that. Stop peddling this idea that the left and the right cannot work together. I know people personally, and then I'll take my leave so we can hear our amazing speakers. I know people personally that have been affected. I have been personally affected by these things that have been happening in our community. And I urge, because I know for a fact a lot of our Republican colleagues are watching this today. I urge you all, if you are truly going to stand up for the state of Georgia and for the Georgians in this state, work with us, work with me. And if you're not willing to work with us, put out a bill that makes sense for the state of Georgia. Like it was mentioned earlier, the Democrats don't have control of the agenda. But if you truly want to make a difference, instead of putting out these mundane tones of I'm sorry and we can do better next time, put out a bill of your own that will effectively work in the community. Until that day comes, I will be here. Many people will be here so that we can ensure that our community will continue to work properly. And in my final word to the people that are experiencing this, that are going through mental health, because a lot of this is within ourselves as well. Please do not make permanent decisions off of temporary emotion. Too many families are dying at the hands of guns and of emotions and anger and hurt and pain. Do the right thing, get you some help,
for our politicians, grow up and put something on the floor that works for everybody and not just your pockets. Have a great day.
Good morning. My name is Claudia Fruin. Claudia Fruin, Fruin. Claudia, Claudia. Good? Does it sound okay? Okay. Good morning. Good morning. So I'm a pediatrician advocate. I'm a mother and I'm also a grandmother. I've spent the last 10 years of my life trying to help pass laws that are known to decrease the risk of children dying or being injured by a firearm. I asked, what are our priorities? Why are we not doing everything in our power to save children's lives from firearms, the leading cause of death in children in Georgia and in our country? We protect them in cars, we protect them on bikes, we vaccinate them, we give them swimming lessons, we block stairs, we lock up medicines, but we don't lock up our guns. There's no laws. 85% of young childhood deaths by firearm occur in the home. I ask, what are our priorities? We talk about gun violence, the epidemic being secondary to mental health issues, but I counter that the gun violence problem is also fueling mental health issues. Because we fail to pass safer gun laws, our children continue to suffer with anxiety and depression. Enough to take their own lives, easily getting access to a family firearm. Going to school every day only elevates their anxiety with lockdowns, stop the bleed classes, and practicing where to hide from active shooters. What are our priorities when we don't listen to the majority of gun owners like myself, but only to the loudest, most combative ones who have led us to believe we are not safe without an arsenal, and that any regulation of firearms is stripping us of our God-given right to own them? The majority of gun owners know this is not true, and we need to become the loudest new voice in the room. What are our priorities when we put our medical professionals, whose job it is to save lives, at risk of being shot every time they go to work? What are our priorities when more children die in the line of fire than police officers every year? What are our priorities when we can pass laws that prevent a child from changing gender identity, and laws to protect children from social media, and laws to protect the unborn child, but we cannot pass laws to prevent the living child from being harmed or killed by a firearm? So we're asking our legislators and governors to protect us all. None of these laws would restrict law-abiding citizens like myself from owning a firearm. If we can regulate who has access to a gun by universal background checks and safe storage laws, maybe we won't have to guess who may or may not have mental health issues, and our children will live. Thank you.
Laura Judge, Laura-Judge. Before I go into my speech, I want to thank Joshua. As a mother myself, I've been going through this for 2 decades now. I was in high school during the time of Columbine, so I did not want to see another generation of children go through this. So thank you, Joshua, for your words. Thank you, House Democrats, for having me here today, for the opportunity to speak before the public. My name is Laura Judge. I'm a mom, a gun owner, and a Navy veteran, alumnus of the United States Naval Academy. I'm also an anti-gun violence advocate, volunteer member of Moms Demand Action. During session, I spoke to the House Public Safety Subcommittee for a hearing on HB 161 that did not get a vote, sponsored by Dr. Al, which described secure storage around children. I explained that at the Naval Academy, my detailers, otherwise known as upperclassmen, gave me some pretty explicit safety instructions. I also explained that at the Naval Academy, I did not have to think about secure storage because the firearms I used were stored in an armory. The adults in that situation, even though I signed my life over to serve this country, knew to keep those firearms safely secured around college students. And while our military bases aren't exempt from gun violence, leadership in the military knows to take action and examine for red flags to reduce harm on the base. But did the public know that the subcommittee hearing I spoke at almost did not happen? As an advocate in this space, I knew about the bills that were filed in both the House and the Senate. I watched them get ignored before crossover day. I attended the Moms Demand Advocacy Day on February 28th, and with other advocates in this space, such as Giffords Gun Owners for Change and Black Push, we asked the committee chairman to be a leader, to lead by hearing a bill assigned to his committee. And shortly after, a hearing was scheduled, the first hearing on gun safety in 6 years. 6 years. We know we have leaders on both sides of the aisle in this chamber. So we're asking you, please don't hide from this discussion, but continue to be leaders and keep your citizens and our children safe. Thank you.
My name is Janet Paulson, Janet Paulsen. What you just saw me do took over 5 years of intensive physical therapy at the Shepherd Center. I'm a resident of Cobb County of Ackworth. I'm a mother, I'm a volunteer, I'm a graduate of the University of Georgia. So I probably don't look like someone who would be a victim of domestic violence, but I am. I was married for over 15 years, and the last 5 years of the marriage, my husband started experiencing mental health issues, alcoholism, and I knew I had to get out and get my children out, but I knew I would pay a price. It wasn't until my boys, who were my twin sons, who were 13 at the time, came to me and told me that their dad was drinking with them in the car. So for me, that was it. So I went to him and I said, you know, I want a divorce. We can be amicable. This doesn't have to be, you know, nasty at all. And he said, well, why don't you go get the boys, try and leave, and see what happens to you. And then he doubled down and he called my parents and he told my parents that if I thought I was going to leave him or divorce him, I had another thing coming and he was going to kill me. So my boys and I went in hiding in a hotel where we didn't think that he would find us. My parents came into town to stay with us, and for about a week we were back and forth from the police department filing police reports. And then on advice of my attorney in my local police department, I went to get a temporary protective order. That order was granted, but he was also a firearms enthusiast. So I came with pictures of all the firearms, and I gave them the locations where they all were, and I asked for them to be removed. They got all of them, but they let him leave with a 9mm in his truck, and he shot me with it 5 days later. So on November 5th, 2015, also on the advice of my local police department, they advised me to go get a concealed carry permit because they were really worried about him. So the morning of the shooting, I went to the same courthouse, I got the temporary protective order, and I applied for a concealed carry permit. It came in the mail 6 days later when I was in a coma at Kennestone Hospital fighting for my life. That's not the answer. Actually, I'm glad it was just me, because he was wanting to kill all of us. So that morning after I got the concealed carry permit, or applied for it, I went to the grocery store, went to my attorney's office, I signed divorce papers, and then I went to football practice with my dad and the boys. But because I had those groceries in my car, I left practice early, about 20 minutes early, to put the groceries up. And what I didn't know was that he had parked his truck a mile away. He had trudged through the woods behind my house, down a ravine, jumped a creek, and was waiting on us on the side of the house with the 9mm, a gun holster, and an extra box of ammunition. But because I came home early, it was just me, and he ambushed me in my garage. I was able to run, try to get to a neighbor's house screaming, and I heard pop, pop, pop. And I knew I'd been shot because I felt stinging in my abdomen. And I was, running through the woods, but then I thought, you're not gonna make it. So I tried to cut back to go to my other neighbor's house, and he shot me in the leg. But I kept going, and then he shot me in the leg again, and I fell over in the middle of my driveway. Then I watched him come within 2 feet of me, and I watched him shoot me 2 more times. And I knew the last shot had hit my spinal cord because I felt the jolt of electricity going through my body. So he shot me 6 times. He shattered my left knee, my right femur. I have a through and through in my thigh. He shot me in the back and it came out through my abdomen. He shot me in the side and I lost a third of my right lung. And then the last one hit my L2 vertebrae. So I am here advocating for those that didn't make it, because I'm the 1%. I didn't know what that meant when my trauma surgeon told me I was the 1%. And he said, well, Janet, you were DOA when they got you here. I had to crack your chest, clamp your heart, shock your heart with electrodes, and then he massaged it in his hand, and my heart started back. And he said, out of 100 times we do that procedure, it works once. So I'm here advocating for those 99 other people. Bullets don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. And a couple of years ago, my boys and I were in DC and we went to the Jefferson Memorial and we were rolling around and I saw on one side of the memorial, etched in the marble, is the Declaration of Independence. life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. On the other wall, etched in the marble by Thomas Jefferson, it said this: I'm not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions, but laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, that new discoveries are made, new truths are discovered, and manners and opinions change with this change of circumstances. Institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times. We might as well require a man to wear the coat which fitted him when he was a boy. So even Thomas Jefferson knew that we would have to change with the times. Thank you.
I want to thank the speakers, Joshua, Dr. Fu, and Laura. Janet, thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you again for everyone being here to advocate and to demand action now. There are 3 calls of action that I want to share with y'all. First, we have a petition. Please sign that. It'll be online as soon as this press conference is over, to demand a special session now to end gun violence. There are common sense solutions that a majority of Georgians from both political parties support that can help protect the lives of all Georgians. So please sign that petition and hold your elected officials accountable. Second, support the organizations who are doing the critically life-saving work of ending gun violence in America. From Moms Demand Action to Everytown to Giffords, there's so many great organizations out there who are doing this critical work. And third, organize. Organize, organize, organize. The status quo is not acceptable. The current situation and change is not impossible. It is up to us as we, the people, to take back our legislature and elect leaders who will do the right thing in passing gun safety legislation in Georgia and throughout this country. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to any questions. And again, to my colleagues and leaders, if y'all want to answer as well, please let me know.
Have you addressed the governor? Have you asked him about the special session and have what he told you?
So our understanding is that we've reached out to the governor's office. I don't know if there have been any further developments other than that. So, certainly. So last year under Speaker Ralston, Georgia was the leader when it came to moving mental health and prioritizing that need in the state of Georgia and for around the country. Unfortunately, the second part of that comprehensive reform failed to make it through the state legislature this year. Mental health reform is an issue that has complete bipartisan support. Members on both sides and in both chambers have near unanimously supported this issue. Hopefully that's something that we will be able to continue to work together to advance. But again, we have to address the primary issue when it comes to gun violence, which is the guns. So we'll take just a few more questions. Absolutely, and so these bills will be included in a letter that we'll make public after this press conference as well. But first and foremost, legislation that would require universal background checks. Second, safe storage laws. and third, red flag laws. All three of these common sense solutions have bipartisan support, certainly with the majority of Georgians, the majority of Americans, and they are proven to be effective, all right? So hopefully that can be a good starting point and beginning to get this epidemic of gun violence under control and to save lives.
Senator Parent, you talked about trying to reach out to some of your Republican colleagues. Have any of them answered those calls? Has anyone expressed any willingness to do anything?
Thank you for the question. I've had several productive conversations with certain Republican colleagues over my tenure in the Senate, and what I have witnessed is, as Dr. Fruin alluded to, a very extreme, small but outsized group that is of individuals who are incredibly aggressive, issue threats are very graphic, come out immediately in force anytime any of my Republican colleagues begins to support a policy that I know in their hearts they do support and know makes sense. Which is why I say that it must be countered by everyone here, and they must be thanked when they have the courage to endure the relentless, misogynistic, terroristic threats that all of us, but probably especially them, face online the minute they dip their toe in the water that causes them to go running. So I exhort all of you to help them endure that by pushing back, by showing them that the numbers that want this are so much bigger than these extreme, dangerous, frankly, individuals.
So I know it's I know the hour is getting late, and so we're gonna call it at this point. Again, I want to thank everyone who joined us today. Absolutely, a lot of work remains to be done, including banning assault weapons. Again, I want to thank everyone for making the time to be here. Yeah. The people have spoken. They want action now. Thank you again for being here.
You're live on Facebook. Meeting with James Beverly here in the state of Georgia. Sir, how would you describe this crowd today? I mean, what you all are doing.
It's phenomenal. I mean, the reality is that the people are supposed to